Good evening. My name is Elias Redstone and I'm the Artistic Director of Photo 2021 International Festival of Photography. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which I live, and I pay my deep respects to their elders, both past, present, and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. Thank you so much for joining us for Photo Live, a season of conversations with Photo 2021 artists about the social and cultural role photography plays in our everyday lives, highlighting the importance of centering Black, Indigenous, feminist, and queer voices. Photo Live expands on Photo 2021's festival theme, exploring the relationship between photography and the truth. Today, I'm delighted to introduce two extraordinary artists that are currently exhibiting in the Koorie Heritage Trust exhibition, Affirmation, which is on display until the 23rd of August, part of Photo 2021's expanded programme. While Melbourne is in lockdown, I recommended viewing the online materials, including a video tour of the exhibition and digital catalogue. So first of all, we have Paola Balla. Paola is a Wemba Wemba and Gunditjmara woman, a visual artist, curator, writer, lecturer, and PhD candidate. Her art and research focus on Black women's art and activism and its role in disrupting patriarchal and colonial dominant narratives and spaces. Paola utilizes photography as a sovereign act in both process and outcome for expressing Black matriarchy and First Nations ways of being, knowing, and doing. Tashara Roberts is also joining us, and she is a contemporary Indigenous conceptual artist and a Dja Dja Wurrung Yorta Yorta woman. Tashara works as an Indigenous photo media artist whose practice includes photography, moving image, installation, mixed media, painting, sculpture, and jewellery. Sometimes subversive and politically charged, Tashara's practice often explores her Aboriginal heritage and shows the viewer what it is like looking at the world through her eyes. So Tashara and Paola, welcome to Photo Live. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you all doing over there? Do we have volume?
I'm good. Yeah. Hey.
Hey. So I'm about to leave you in a second for a conversation. So the audience knows Tashara and Paola will be speaking for about 30-35 minutes. And then we'll get to questions from the audience at the end. So if anyone has any questions for either of our artists today, please leave them in the comment section at any point during the conversation, and we'll get to those shortly. I'll leave you to it and I'll join you later. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Lars.
Thanks. Hi, Paola.
Hey. You have to remember people are listening to us.
I know. I'll be on my best behaviour, I promise.
Do you mind if I just say something, like just acknowledgement and before
Absolutely.
we go? Thank you. Thank you so much, Elias. Thank you for acknowledging country as well. I'd like to acknowledge that I am on Bunurong and Wurundjeri country in the western suburbs of Melbourne, in a locked down area. And it's making me think a lot about how much it means to be on country, how much it means to live off your own homelands. As Elias said, my people are Wemba Wemba and Gunditjmara, so I'm really missing our homelands, which are quite a while away from here. But I'm incredibly grateful to live here and thank the ancestors and ongoing custodians of country. Here I am. So yeah, I'm so happy to be here with you, Tashara.
Thanks. I'm currently on the country of my ancestors, so I feel very fortunate. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on Dja Dja Wurrung country and pay respects to my ancestors and my elders, past, present, and emerging. It's I can't imagine what it's like for you being locked down or off your own country. I feel so fortunate that I'm on my own country, and I'm in a little place called Bridgewater, which is about 2 hours northwestish of Melbourne, 40 minutes northwest of Bendigo.
Yeah.
And we're not in lockdown, but I've been pretty isolated anyway, because I think that this COVID pandemic stuff is pretty scary for everybody. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in a little place called Footscray.
Yes, I noticed that your practice revolves quite a bit around Footscray.
It does. It's really funny because, you know, as Aboriginal people, when we talk about home and homelands or home country, for non-Aboriginal people that might be listening, and if we refer to country, we're not talking about all of, you know, so-called colonial Australia. We're talking about our homelands, our traditional lands. And so I was actually born here in 1974, but ended up being taken home by mum up to, when I say home, I mean our homelands, and also into Yorta Yorta country. And we lived there at Echuca a lot, and then would travel to our Wemba Wemba homelands for, you know, Christmas, Easter, camping, visits, funerals, gatherings, all of that. But yeah, I do love it here. I do make a lot of my work about this place because I'm a proud Westie, you know, as well as being an Aboriginal woman. I'm a proud Westie. I love how rough and tumble Footscray is. It's being rapidly gentrified. So it's one of the reasons I love making the Mook Mook images, because she's my alter ego. You know, she's also this powerful spiritual woman that is transcending, you know, all the white bullshit and all the Karens that you get in being gentrified inner city suburbs, you know. So I like playing with that character and doing photo shoots with her around my local streets. Yeah.
It's funny, I was also born on Wurundjeri country,
Yeah.
but I'm a north girl, so I spent a lot of my teen years in a little place called Broadmeadows. You may know of it. It's very up and coming.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a very affluent area.
Love
no,
Love it.
I don't think that area is quite as gentrified.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do get what you're talking about when you say the rough and tumble.
Yeah.
I quite often when I'm doing cultural awareness training for work, I talk about, you know, spending my formative years as a rough little knucklehead from Broadmeadows. So,
well, it's, you know, there's a great a paper that Dr. Chelsea Bond did with a colleague, you know, an amazing Aboriginal critical race theorist and academic. And she's got this paper called Good in the Hood, you know, or Burn It Down. And there's a lot of black fellows who are from the hood. So I think both of our work and a lot of the work of Aboriginal artists that, you know, I'm pretty sure we both adore, and photographers, we talk about that myth busting, that we're not all from the bush. It's not all romantic. We don't all look the same. And some of us come from really hood areas of, you know, cities, but we're still who we are.
Absolutely. You know, I like that Adam Goods used to describe himself as the urban Aboriginal. You know, I think that's how many of us grow up, you know. I'm really fortunate that I moved back to country probably about 7 years ago now. And, you know, that really changed my art practice, I think. I went from my art practice being very urban to very about country.
Yeah.
You know, which we'll see in some of the images that we show tonight.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I kind of end up mixing it up. When I'm missing living at home up on country, I tend to make works that are about longing for it, but also the reality of what it's like to live as an urban blackfella. And also the other thing too, I just want to say, in calling ourselves black, or the term black that I might use in some of the text around my photographic works, and some of my writing, is black where we drop the C, and it's BLAK. And in an Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander context, the brilliant Destiny Deacon, who is one of my all-time favourite artists and an iconic artist, photographer, started using that term in the 1990s here to talk about the lived urban experience of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander in these city spaces. So yeah, it's really influential.
Absolutely. How good is Destiny Deacon? I think the first time when I was growing up, you know, she was one of the artists that I was looking at, you know. So I think the first time I actually had the pleasure of meeting Destiny was at the Sovereignty Show, which you co-created, co-curated.
Oh, really? Did you get to?
Yeah.
That's so great. When I first left the country to come to the city, you know, to go to uni and all that stuff, because I was sort of living between my parents in one way, not completely between them, but my mum had left my dad, who was actually an Italian migrant. And so I only saw him a couple of times a year growing up, but I would come from up in, you know, the bush down to Footscray for the school holidays and hang with him at his pizza shop and watch Footscray change over the years. But yeah, that sense of coming to the city, moving backwards and forwards, that sense of longing. When I'm 18, I'm at uni and I'm quite homesick for home. I'm at the, you know, prestigious Melbourne University. Not doing very well, by the way. I was struggling a lot. Destiny turns out to be one of my first tutors.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And I was just like, you know, completely in awe and nervous and scared. And she just would put me on the spot all the time and say, come on, big shot. You know, that you're the only Aboriginal person I got in my class. What do you think about this? And she just forced me to articulate my opinion on art, on literature, what Black art was, what Black literature was, what photography was, how to tell the truth, you know. You know, and I suppose we need to touch on that, like the theme, you know.
Absolutely.
It's about truth. And I think most, you know, Aboriginal artists and Indigenous artists are really truth tellers, you know, and we're forced to be because we're having to deal with the ongoing colonial project, violence, you know, deaths in custody, you know, ongoing. But yeah, the truth matters, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the interesting thing in that conversation is, as an Aboriginal woman, particularly an Aboriginal woman artist, we've got this network of women around us that sort of supports us and guides us and teaches us. And, you know, you talk a lot about that in your work, you know, because your work is often about feminism, women and children, you know, the matriarchy. And, you know, I did a little bit of research coming up to this talk about your work. And well, you know, I thought I knew Paola Balla. And when I started to do a little bit of research, I didn't realise just how much of, you know, not only your work, my work, most Aboriginal artists, our work is always political. It's always got some sort of social justice theme behind it. It's always trying to tell some truth, trying to educate the wider community. Yeah. And, you know, like your work, Mok Mok, my work, male, female, and freak. And I should actually put that up, shouldn't I?
Yeah. Do that.
So that didn't work at all.
Oh, I can see it.
I did it? Yes, it's on.
Yeah, okay. I can see it. It looks great.
It confused me. Yeah, I'm so tech savvy and I work in a university. But anyway.
Same. And it's stuff up all the time. It's okay.
So, you know, when I think about Mok Mok and this work, it's trying to tell some truth, but at the same time, it's both fact and fiction. Yeah. You know, they're constructed identities, constructed characters, you know, that we've both, you know, they're self-portraits, but they're not self-portraits of us. But they're also the idea behind it is trying to tell some truth. So for this work, you know, and I'd like you to show some of your Mok Mok work in a minute.
Yeah.
In comparison to this, but this work was about queerness. It was about what it was like growing up as a queer Aboriginal teenager. Yeah. And not fitting in anywhere, not fitting into either gender stereotype and feeling like a freak, you know. And so the idea behind this work was to show the wider community what that experience was like, you know. So it sort of tells the truth, but through fiction, you know, through falsehoods, I suppose. And I think that's really the power in photography. You get to play with that fact or fiction, that truth or untruth. Even when you're trying to educate the wider community and show them some truth that's underlying.
Yeah, and I think too the pressure to always educate as Indigenous artists, as Black people, because we're both as well, and that's something that a lot of international audiences might not realize, that we are both Indigenous people and we identify as Black. And some people, I've watched this play out on social media, they struggle with understanding how this is, but that's just our reality, that's our truth. And I think because we're such diverse looking people as well as Aboriginal people across, and Torres Strait Islander people across this country, for me, the self-representation in photography is so important, because like you, we wouldn't have seen many versions of ourselves represented on the TV shows that were forced down our throat on white Australian television, which is still white as hell, even though you see some inclusion of Aboriginal actors on screen. The people that would read you the news, your teachers, politicians, the picture books, you know, even greeting cards always have white babies, children, angels or fairies on them. So I refuse to buy them, you know. But I think that self-representation, for me, it was about putting myself in the picture. And I love those works of yours because, like you said, it is a truth and a fiction at the same time. And that's why some of my favorite women identifying artists play with identity in their work. So like Destiny Deacon does that. And there's a Black woman artist from the States, a young artist who's she's based in LA, I think, and her name's Genevieve Gaingard. And she plays with that because she appears, she talks about being white passing. And, you know, in the US, some of that terminology is mixed. I don't use that terminology. Generally for us, if you're Aboriginal, and that strength of, you know, knowledge of self is ancestral, and it's blood, and it's lived experience, and it's your who claims you, who you claim, you know, it's all of that. It's very complex, you know. So that's what I love about that work. I can see these different versions of yourself, and it's like, where is the truth? And with my kids, I always say to them, you know, I tell them a lot of stories, and that storying is one way that I've survived trauma. You know, as an Aboriginal woman in this country, my story of trauma is not uncommon. It's very common.
Not at all.
So common. We're transgenerationally traumatized by invasion, genocide, and ongoing colonialism. So when you take control of the representation of yourself through imagery, it's so empowering. Like I find so much freedom in it, and learning to really let go and not give a fuck, because, and also as I get older, you know, I'm in my 40s.
So am I now.
You sort of learn more about yourself, and you can let go of some of those, you know, horrific traumas and scars that are placed on you. And you learn to sort of, for me, it was like universally figuring out and historically where they belong, because I'm like, that does not belong to me. And I don't want to carry that anymore. That is not mine, and it needs to be placed somewhere. So for me, my work always has to be political, but also beautiful to me. Not in any, you know, Western notion of beauty or any, and, you know, and I'm a, you know, straight cisgendered woman. So I'm not talking about any classic version, anything like that. It's just, beauty is in like resistance, and it's in strength, and it's in subverting, and yeah.
It's interesting because I reckon most First Nations people measure not only success but also beauty very differently to the rest of the world. You know, in a lot of my works, one of the things that I loved about the work that's currently on Instagram, Portrait of Lake Epilogue, is that it's trash, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I suppose I should share that, shouldn't I?
Show it, yeah.
So if I can make the technology work.
Yeah.
So this is the work here. So I was going around Lake Epilogue collecting litter and taking it into my studio and photographing it. And these were all done on a scanner. But
so were you laying these out?
Yeah, so it started with me photographing litter in the landscape, and then I would take it out and decontextualize it and make typologies of it.
Wow.
And then I wanted to play with a different type of image maker, so I bought a scanner and I scanned. I collected litter, I took it home, I cleaned it, and then I scanned it with black velvet behind it. And you know, it's interesting that truth, but it's also the beauty in something that's discarded, you know, something that people have just left there, and you know, is really messing up our environment, which is what started this series. I was really getting annoyed with going everywhere and finding litter.
Disturbing, isn't it? Like, it actually, especially on your own country, it's disturbing.
It was so horrendous, and it still happens now. Every time I go out bush, or any time I go to the river and there's litter there, I'm constantly carting litter home. And so I decided that I was going to start photographing it. And then I you know, also took photos of the natural landscape, and you know, things that were natural: charcoal, rocks, sand, leaves, feathers, all sorts of things. And these to me are so honest and truthful and full of beauty on their own.
And they're sort of like the healing
beauty.
They're like the healing respite to seeing the human-made rubbish, you know. And it's really interesting using black velvet, you know, in the background when you think about the terminology. You know, for people that don't know, like, black velvet was coined as a term early in colonial history in Australia by a white poet and writer called Henry Lawson, to name Aboriginal women, and our sex, our actual genitals, and about how Aboriginal women's bodies were used and abused and subjugated in colonialism, like to use the body of the Aboriginal woman. And I was in a conversation with a brilliant artist, Ali Baker, about her work, and she was saying, you know, there hasn't been a reckoning yet, really, for the damage that's been done to the body of the Aboriginal woman in this country. It's an ongoing trauma. And so I love that you're, you know, layering it on the black velvet. That's really great.
Well, there's also a feminist element to this as well. You know, I was going to these places that were dominated by men, boat ramps, places where they'd fish. And so, you know, in my mind, the majority of the people that left this litter were men. And you know, here's this black woman saying, no, this isn't okay. You know, it's not okay, and it's making me upset, and I have to deal with this, but I also have to show the public the truth about what's being left there. You know?
I think many times down the river, because we grew up on the river at Echuca, you know, in Dungala, Murray River, and my mum and auntie's grandmother, many times seen them just rip the hell out of white men and white people for leaving rubbish behind, for you know, urinating, defecating in the river, making too much noise. You know, speedboats and things like that, all these things that are the very opposite to like deep listening and caring for country. You know, so I think you're in that long legacy of black women ripping into people and making them, holding them accountable for their actions, to what happens to, you know, like it's echo side of our country. You know, it's not just the big fuel companies and the oil companies and the companies that are fracking and mining. It comes right down to how people behave.
Absolutely.
I love those works. They're beautiful. Should I show mine?
Yes, absolutely. We want to see Mok Mok.
If I don't stuff this up, all right, let me try.
Now, do I say that correctly?
You can say Muk Muk.
Muk Muk.
So in our language group, but I think our language groups are very similar, because you've got a word that's similar to ours. You've got a word that's, how is that coming through? Are you getting the whole display?
Swap the displays.
I did it again. Okay. So I'm just going to skip.
We work at a university, by the way.
You think I have this sort of, would you believe I teach students how to do this stuff? Okay, so yeah, so muk muk. So there's a lot of that emphasis on the ul sound. It's just sort of shortening it. And I was told stories about the muk muk character, the woman, the spiritual character who lived in the bush, this fearless Aboriginal woman who lived in the past and the present at the same time, you know. And she really captured my imagination because my mother and grandmother and aunties would tell us these stories about these muk muk. So if we weren't careful when we were out bush and weren't listening to our elders, then muk muk could, you know, take you. She might steal a young man if she felt like it, you know. So talk about sort of these black feminist matriarchal warriors. They would just do their thing. So I wanted to also acknowledge that Auntie Margaret Tucker, who wrote one of the world's first biographies by an Aboriginal person in 1977, and it was called If Everyone Cared. And Auntie Marge actually documented one of the muk muk stories. So I just want to acknowledge that too.
It's beautiful imagery, even though it's quite disturbing and scary at the same time.
Well, I think that's, you know, before, like when you showed your images of you in your different guises, for me, I needed to get into this guise because I'd always loved the idea of playing with characters and dress up. And my mum actually would dress in drag. She would do a drag king character when I was a kid in the 80s in a toque, and she would do that to entertain her, you know, her titters, her sisters in community.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and so my mum just had no hang-ups about it wasn't about a particular identity or a particular sexuality. She saw it as a fluid thing. And I think it's also in the history that a lot of Aboriginal women and Black women throughout the world and Indigenous women have had to dress as men at times in order to protect themselves.
Absolutely.
And it's, yeah, and women, you know, we still do that. That still happens. Not for me to comment. I'm not commenting on trans people's identities at all. What I'm saying is when women have to survive, like you said, male-dominated areas. And so my mum would do that. And she showed me this freedom in how you could shift, like shape shift, you know, to survive.
Absolutely. You know, when I used to, in another lifetime, I used to go and photograph street art in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, I would put on a persona. So I'd go in workwear, no makeup, beanie, and make myself look masculine in order to keep myself safe.
Yeah.
And nobody ever looked at me.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? There's so much, there's such a rich history of that and ongoing culture. But this for me was at the start of my PhD process, which was about 5 years ago now. So I'm nearly at the end. And I was very overwhelmed. I was really terrified about how I was actually going to pull off a PhD project. And I did a creative thesis. So I did a whole body of work and I'm just finishing up the writing about it now. So I felt like I needed some courage. And I thought if I played around with the idea of becoming like a muk muk, becoming a muk muk in this gentrified city space, to survive academia, you know, being a Black woman, being an Aboriginal woman in the university, in the academy, in a PhD space is tough. And so, I was looking for some courage and an alter ego to get through it, I guess. So, yeah, and I collected a lot of Aboriginal kitsch objects that some of you can see in the photograph that are really common in Australian homes and businesses. And a lot of people pretend they don't have them anymore, but they're really racist, inhumane depictions of us. And, you know, White Australia has a real nostalgia for them. So when I see them in op shops and stores and things, I feel like I need to take them back.
And yeah, I do the same thing. I collect the Aboriginal tea towels and plates.
All that stuff. There's so much of it. And you know, and Tony Albert makes whole bodies of work with it.
Amazing work.
Yeah. So this was Mook Mook, and also my little dog is there and sitting in the basket modeling. Little Toto.
Very well behaved dog.
Thank you. And the other thing for me about, a Black feminism for me in matriarchy is freeing myself of bras and underwear. So I know I've seen some articles like during COVID, a lot of women are saying goodbye to bras, working from home and being stuck, in this little screen. My grandmother, always said that we should free ourselves from that because that was an imposition that white women and the white culture put on us to entrap our bodies, in ways that weren't healthy. So I freed myself. That series was fantastic, but I've sort of mixed up my attire. So I've got like exercise pants on and blue suede heels and my dilly bag that my auntie gifted me, and there's an emu egg in that basket. I'm wearing an apron, because I'm trying to be like a domestic goddess. And
you should show the audience some of the other muk pictures, because there's my favorite.
Do you love this one? I love this one because I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I was told you're never allowed to run a knife across your tongue.
Yep, absolutely.
So, of course, I wanted to do that. And it's, one of those really old bone-handled knives that are incredible for cooking. And there's also, every object in there, it looks quite domestic. And there's a lot of familiar objects for people in this country in New Zealand, the Australian-New Zealand cookery book. That was my mum's from the 1970s. So a lot of things are historical little clues,
Yeah.
But that knife, a lot of Aboriginal women and men will have their one good knife or that one good spoon that you do damper with. So it's that idea too of transcending rations and poverty and making do with very meager, ingredients, like from mission days, from being pushed around and, having to, lose the majority of our bush foods and live off flour. So I've got the flour, on my boobs and making a little chocolate cake and and also just doing that thing of like this one, enjoying food, like because as women, apparently we're meant to nibble on salad politely in public, and I sort of say, fuck that, I need to eat, and I like to eat with my hands and indulge and pretending at the time that I was eating male flesh. So one of the Muk stories was about Muk punishing men who'd broken the law, and she chops their bodies up and cooks it on a fire. So it's sort of like this ultimate Black feminist act of fearlessness, really.
Those eyes, my goodness. You're so good at playing the character, When I look at your work, I think of the work of, Cindy Sherman or Claude Cahoon, that both women who use photography and costume, I suppose, to say something quite often socially political.
Yeah, and I think that strong, that positioning too about the woman's experience of being able to transform yourself is really, it is very, very empowering, because there are so many stupid rules in, we're in the same age group, the things that you get told when you're growing up, like pink and green should never be seen, and don't like these idiotic and sit like a lady, and that's not very ladylike. I mean, they're the kind of things I got told growing up and at school. And I remember looking at my mum and nan and going, you were really like fierce warrior women, what are you worrying about me sitting right for? Like but again, it was that they had to protect you from being overly expressive and protecting yourself in the space where there might be white men, and trying to make yourself small and unnoticed to survive.
That's situational awareness, really, isn't it?
Oh, like hyper vigilance, that's what happens to colonized peoples. Like you have to be hyper vigilant to survive. Yeah.
And it's funny, the Muk story. It's really the second layer to that is that our old women would tell us stories in order to protect us. So, on Dja Dja Wurrung country, I remember one of the aunties telling me about the little hairy people that used to take children.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so all of these stories were put in place because there was this history of women and children being targeted, Aboriginal women and children being targeted, and so it was a protection mechanism.
Yeah, and I think scary stories are fine. I think it's important to actually be scared as a kid. Like, it was one of my greatest thrills. Terrifying, but we get told really horrifying stories up the bush, especially when it's dark. And if you don't stay near that fire and listen to people and not go in the river by yourself, you know, because if you do, the bunyip will get you. You know, there's creatures there and there's little people waiting on the bridge for you. It's also the amazing power of imagination. It's the amazing power of keeping your culture and your stories alive in yourself and your next generation as well. And whether that's your own kids or nieces and nephews or chosen family that you're sharing it with, like, that culture is so powerful. I love it. I still do it. It's still a thrill, and everything in like child psychology or whatever tells you that, you know, you're not meant to scare kids like that. And it's like, no, that's our culture. It's learning through story and learning through the theory in the story as well. And that's what I really love playing with in the photographs as well. There's real, you know, freedom with the camera.
So this work is all part of your PhD.
Yeah. Sorry, I sort of just left that the PowerPoint thing hanging for a bit, but the last one I was looking at was me pegging out the washing, and it's called Washing Day, Sis. You know, so again, it was me just trying to deal with like how the hell do women, like, do mothers, do working mothers, how do we do this work? Like, how do we actually achieve these things? The pressure is immense. So something's got to give, you know. So, you know, you give up doing washing, or you give up the idea of having clean clothes every week or something, or, you know, more takeout food or whatever it is. There's so much pressure to be a perfect parent, a perfect mum, and to get things right. So I just told my kids at the beginning of the PhD, I said, I'm just going to be as mediocre as I like right now. So you're not going to get a good mum, you're getting an average one, and you can just cope.
So tell me about your PhD. You know, how's academic research, informed your art practice?
Oh, okay. So because I'm doing, you know, a creative thesis project, I know that a lot of artists do, you know, really sort of deep look or critical analysis into their own practice. And they might create a new body of work, and it's art as research, or what people call practice-led research, you know. So it gets a bit confusing and murky. And what I knew was that I wanted to privilege the academia and artwork, literature of Black and Indigenous women, and Latinx women, and you know, Black feminist work as my theory to drive it. So that's really driven it, as opposed to me sort of looking at art theory, for example, because I just find art theory way too white, and it just erases us. If we're not absent already, it erases us through this, I don't know, it's almost like concept and technique first, and I just find it empty. So I have to sort of say, well, what I'm inspired by is, like, you know, Toni Morrison talking about that art should be irrevocably political and irrevocably beautiful at the same time. And Professor Aileen Morton-Robinson talking about relationality and the responsibilities that we have to each other, and how we know ourselves through ourselves and through the other, you know, and Aboriginal standpoint theory, and Professor Tracy Bunda talking about Aboriginal women as sovereign warriors. So that for me is the academic theory, really, for me, and that's all the standpoint that holds it, sort of all the threads together. So I'm really sort of seeing it. I've been talking about the theory that I've developed as ghost weaving. So I'm weaving together the past, present, and future, and I draw on family archives of my matriarchs, the body of work, the prolific body of work by Aboriginal women artists in this country who've gone before us. And then how I bring that together, and predominantly use photography, and then I used eco and bush dyeing to bring it to the end.
I saw that. I do a bit of eco dyeing myself.
I love it.
It's so amazing. Do you think that the work that you're doing in your PhD is creating new opportunities, or giving platform to young First Nations women artists?
I hope so, because what I wanted to do was really platform the reality of our lived experience, and that is that people bandy around intersectionality a lot, but the reality is for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women in this country is that our indigeneity, our class, our gender, and our social positioning has us pinned, and has us as the most vulnerable, the most oppressed, and the most violated people in this country. And I don't care what anybody says to me, that is a fact. That is our lived reality that we fight against constantly. We also have to fight against patriarchy in our own communities, and homophobia and transphobia. And it's really important that for me, I just use every platform I can to say, we need to be able to say our truth. And sometimes it's really ugly and uncomfortable, but we need to be able to say it to heal. Otherwise we get trapped in lives of bloody being silent, and the trauma makes you sick. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the fascinating statistics, we're being told we've got 5 minutes. If black fellas like to yarn, I could go on for another hour.
We'll just keep talking.
So I think the interesting thing is that the statistic that scares me the most is that Aboriginal women are the most incarcerated people in the world. Not only in this country,
Yep.
in the world.
Yep, and it's growing. We're the fastest growing incarcerated group as well.
I think that's very telling.
Yeah.
I suppose I should show some of my images from Affirmation, because that's what we were here to do, and I've shown everything but.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that we got to be, in a show together, and that Affirmation still happened. Thank you, Koorie Heritage Trust, and all the other artists in the show, Deanne and Piera, because it's healing and validating to still be able to be a part of your art practice when everything is shut down.
Absolutely. And it was a completely new experience for most of us to have to do all of this preparation and printing and all of these things from a distance. We had to relinquish control a little bit, which was both stressful and liberating.
So true, yes.
It so was. But I feel really fortunate that I'm in this show with, other strong Aboriginal women. And the work in the show is pretty amazing. So, get on and have a look on the Koorie Heritage Trust website.
And the whole catalogue is there too to download, which is really
cool. I was looking at it this afternoon, actually. So this is my work in the show, and this is called Gapila, which is it's deep listening through touch. So Gapila is a component of deep listening, known in Dja Dja Wurrung language as Nyunyala. Every time I see a tree, I'm compelled to touch it. I don't know what it is. I think a lot of black fellas feel this way.
I'm the same. I have to hug them.
Yeah. I have to touch country, I have to connect with it, not only through deep listening, but also physically. So this is how this work started. And the more I started to think about, the more I'd touch trees, it was like touching human skin. The fact that trees to us are like siblings, they're like family, they're part of our kinship system. Country is part of our kinship system. And I started to think about, what's the difference between the skin on my hand and the bark on this tree?
Yeah. It's so intimate and beautiful. It reminds me of Michael Riley's work.
Oh, that's a very big compliment.
It really does. It's just so, there's something, like I said, just very, very intimate, and it's actually quite emotional when you look deeply into it and you're thinking about that connection and the big grandfather, gum trees especially, that, these trees that stand witness to everything that's taken place here.
Absolutely. It's maybe the largest part of our identity. The truth is, in these images, is our connection to country and our ability to listen to country using all of our senses at the same time. You talked earlier about First Nations ways of knowing, and through First Nations ways of knowing, knowledge is gained, you know, both through human-led ways, like the Western ways, but also through instinctive, revealed, relational means such as ancestral memory, country, and kinship.
Yeah.
And so this is about country, kinship, and listening to country. And the fact that, you know, we have this reciprocal relationship with country. I think Western ways is to dominate land and dominate animals, and, you know, our way is to live with country. And, you know, this was about their skin being our skin, their blood, their pain, our pain, their loss is our loss. You know, we're connected, we're part of each other, and we have this reciprocal relationship, and they have knowledge to give us, stories to tell.
Yeah.
They help sustain us, and, you know, in return, we've got this responsibility to care for them.
That's right.
As they care for us.
Yeah.
I've wanted to make this work for a really long time, but I think the thing that made me do it was those bushfires that took place.
Oh, yeah.
Those recent bushfires really, every black fella I spoke to, you know, was in pain.
Yeah.
They were hurting.
Yeah, it brought on such immense grief.
It absolutely did. And, you know, I thought to myself, you know, the whole country is upset about this, but I think black fellas felt it on a much deeper level because of that connection to country.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so, you know, we got to see not only a devastatingly traumatic experience, but we watched our brothers and sisters burn, starve, become homeless.
Yeah, and so many totem animals, different mobs, and just I ended up writing a piece for the Sydney Book Review, and I remember I was so overwhelmed with emotion when I wrote it, because I didn't realise how much had been sitting there, and just thinking about how many you know, how many places and sites and plants and animals, trees that were related to ongoing generational cultural, you know, songlines and tracks and story places were just gone forever. And this is not colonization. You can't just rebuild it, you know. So yeah, I really feel that sense of deep connection in those. I love that series. Beautiful. Yeah. Maybe we could swap some work before we finish up tonight.
Why not?
I think we have to go soon. I think Elias is going to come back soon. And
yeah, I definitely think he is going to tell us that we need to be quiet.
Yeah.
I'm yet, Elias.
Maybe
Can
we
I keep talking?
Go and have some dinner.
Hi. I'm enjoying this so much. I didn't really want to interrupt at all.
Oh, that's nice.
This is a great conversation. Unfortunately, we haven't had any audience questions come in, but I just want to ask you to elaborate on something that came up near the start of the conversation, which was about beauty and how you talk about different notions of beauty. And I was kind of curious to know how you feel that plays out in the making of artwork, because it's a very clear aesthetic decisions that have gone into the presentations of the ideas that you communicate in your practice. I was just wondering if you can elaborate a bit more on that, especially for people who may not be familiar with the context in Australia.
Yeah, thanks, Elias. Do you mind, Tashara, if I go?
No, you go first. I've got some stuff to say too, but I'm happy for you to go.
I think, Elias, because historically, by colonial, you know, so-called artists, say cartoon artists, and the early colonial depictions of Aboriginal women were of us as, you know, not human. We were depicted as being either ape-like, drunk, broken down, either always sitting at the edge of the frame, usually with alcohol bottles strewn around us, and we're in a very broken down state in the early depictions of us, and extremely highly offensive derogatory terms about Aboriginal women, which have persisted to this day. And so I remember growing up looking at my mother and my grandmother, my aunties, my cousins, my sister cousins, and just marveling at how absolutely beautiful they were. inside and out, in their spirit, in their strength, in their resilience, in their love, unconditional love for other people, their generosity, their kindness, you know, and their bloody strength. And it would make me just heartbroken when I would hear the way we would be spoken about, and also the way that Aboriginal women are sexually subjugated in this country and continue to be. And so I really love celebrating the fact that we're actually incredibly beautiful and powerful, and everything that the media and Australian history, white history, says that we're not. So it's really important to me that we have self-determination and self-representation in our imagery. And I'm just in awe of the incredible amount of young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women on social media platforms who are just absolutely killing it with the most profound, powerful, self-determined and sovereign ways of presenting themselves. You know, there's a whole revolution happening on social media with young Black and Indigenous people. So that really excites me. It gives me a lot of, I don't like to use the term hope because it's something that gets used against us, but it gives me a lot of inspiration and energy. Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree with everything you said there, Paola, but I've got another level to add to that too. You know, I think it's really true. I look at the Aboriginal women that are around me, and I see beauty in their spirit, you know, beauty in their strength, and that's so true. But I also see beauty in things on country that most people walk past every day. You know, people don't even pay attention to the dirt, and I'll see beauty in it. You know, people walk past these beautiful gum trees that have muruk, they have spirit, you know, and I'll see beauty in them, you know, beauty in the way that the light touches the trees, or you know, that wood duck that nobody even thinks twice to look at. Or here in Bridgewater, we've got an issue with well, I don't think it's an issue with corellas. I think corellas are the most beautiful thing ever, but everybody hates them.
Yeah.
Thinks they're ugly, they're noisy. Yeah, I look at them and I think they're one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And I think this...
Can you just explain what a Tashara is?
Sorry?
Can you just explain what that is?
A corella?
Yeah.
Oh, so a corella is a white bird that's very noisy and messy. Does tear the trees to bits a little bit.
They're disruptive, aren't they, Tashara?
They are. They're naughty. They're agitators, and maybe that's why I like them. They're a little bit like a cockatoo, but without the crest. They have pink around their eyes, but they are very, very noisy. And the farmers have trouble with them eating their crops, but I figure that they probably have the right to because they were here first. Don't tell my neighbours. Yeah, but I look at those birds that everybody thinks are an annoyance, or the bats that are in Roslyn Park at Bendigo that everybody thinks are these annoying, smelly, noisy creatures, and I think they're absolutely beautiful. And I think the reason that I can see through that stuff is because they're part of country.
Yeah.
You know, I can see that they have muruk, they have spirit, and that their life is no less important than mine. You know, they're equal to me. And they're just doing what they're meant to do. So, yeah, I think that we do see beauty on a deeper level, and we see beauty in the banal, you know, or what Western culture would say is banal.
Yeah. And what gets discarded.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a beautiful point to end this conversation on, I think, to hopefully inspire everyone to look at their surroundings and environment in a slightly more open, deeper way, and really sort of take in the landscape that's around us. So thank you so much for such an open and frank and inspiring conversation. It's been a pleasure to listen to you both.
Thanks for having us.
Yay.
Very welcome. It just leaves me to thank Creative Victoria and Australia Council for the Arts for supporting Photo Live, and to encourage everyone to come back next Thursday at 6 p.m. where we'll be joined by queertech.io, a collective of Melbourne-based queer identifying new media artists, in conversation with the Dutch artist Rosa Menkman. Both these artists will be exhibiting the upcoming exhibition at RMIT Gallery, The Image Looks Back, also part of Photo 2021's expanded program running throughout the year. The Photo 2021 festival itself will take place from 18th of February to 7th of March. And if you'd like to find out more about Photo 2021 or the Photo Live program, visit photo.org.au. I would urge everyone to check out Affirmation online while we can't get to the exhibition in person. There's a great video that will walk you through the show, and the catalogue, which we've all mentioned already, has some excellent texts about each of the artists that's exhibiting, and it makes for a very compelling read. So do check that out. And once more, Tashara, Paola, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.